Osio, Ayoldaza. Welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. And now we're back with part two of The Empire Strikes Black. Okay. And let's see where we left off at. Let me just make sure everything is functioning correctly. Yeah, that record thing is on. Looks like everything is good. Just give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, without further delay, let's get started. I just had to get certain things in place. Okay, so I don't want to be too long. I have to do this in half-hour increments. Because that's what we started off with, and I want to keep it consistent. And plus, it's almost time to eat. Anyway, okay, so the genealogy problem. So we left off with the genealogy problem. Let me set this clock here. 30 minutes. All right. Okay, so all right. So the genealogy problem. So back in the days, due to the consciousness of where the people were during this time, we're talking about the early 90s here. The thought was heavy Afrocentrism. I mean, it still goes on today with the whole conscious community and stuff like that. But realistically, even what you call the conscious community today is not really conscious, because they have actually really taken like 50 steps backwards. They know less than they did back in those days. I mean, some of the stuff I hear them saying is just ridiculous. I mean, I don't want to call any names, but I mean, should we really be? Let me keep my mouth shut. Let me keep my mouth shut. Let me just keep my mouth shut. But certain things just shouldn't be debatable. You know, I mean, should we really be debating about whether or not vaccines should be taken by the community? I mean, that should be a moot issue by now. I mean, you know, that was that whole idea was torn to shreds, you know, back in the 90s. I mean, anyway, you know, I can go on with a whole lot of stuff that I hear, you know, certain myths and stuff that were debunked back in the days, you know, the 80s and 90s, you know, that people are not even clear about in this day and time, you know. I understand we have millennials who are just coming into knowledge. For them, I make an excuse. But, you know, somebody that's my age and older, you know, who are active, you know, like in the 80s and 90s, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's no excuse. Um, anyway, let's move forward. So, the genealogy problem. Um, we passed this slide. This is slide 10. We left off at slide 11. Okay, so we're past here now. So, right, I knew something was off. Okay, so now these books here, Black Genealogy is a good book. It helped clear up some misconceptions. And one thing I noticed that Bloxton mentioned in Black Genealogy is that he mentioned the fact that trying to trace ancestry back to Africa is one thing that's going to be, for the most part, impossible for those of us who live in the Americas. Okay? And he also explained that less than 5% of the less than 5% of our people that came over here via the transatlantic slave trade actually came to North America. Okay? And so, you know, that right there cleared up a lot, because I was, you know, trying, and as far as genealogy is concerned, I couldn't go past the Americas. I was wondering why, and then, you know, I started talking to grandma, started talking to, you know, the elders, you know, and stuff like that, and it all became very clear to me, you know. Like I said, the Indian thing was always, there was never any issues with that. That was always a given, you know. Quote unquote Indian, you know. That's a misnomer, you know. But yeah, that was always a given. So, you know, I started looking more to doing genealogy where it's practical, which is here in the Americas. And my grandmother, my grandma Hilda May, you know, she had basically gave me a whole lot of genealogy going back, you know, like into the 1800s, you know, and, you know, I just took it from there, you know, and built upon that, and really built upon it, you know. And this book here is another one, Black History: A Guide to Civilian Records in the National Archives. You know, you get these two books, you're well on your way. Okay. Um, so let's see here. All right. So back in the days, a gentleman by the name of William Lauren Katz wrote a book entitled Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage. And this book came out in 1986, and it popularized the quote-unquote Black Indian movement. Now, there were books written prior to that, but this book had popularized the whole Black Indians movement, okay? And that's a good book to have in your arsenal, okay? So what happened was Lauren Katz, the late Lauren Katz, he's deceased. He went on Gary Bird's show back in the days. This is when Gary Bird's show was on WLIB radio station. And he talked about his book. And when he started talking about, because I was just coming in from outside and turned on Gary Bird. And, LIB was the station back in the days, and the LIB was right there at the Apollo Theater up in Harlem, So I used to go there back in the day, sit in the audience and stuff like that. You could go there and watch the shows live. And so, I came home and I turned on the radio station and I heard William Lauren Katz, and I said, "Oh man!" I went and I put a cassette tape in the tape deck. See, back in the days, you listen to the radio, you got a cassette, and things weren't, digital like they are now, and so I recorded the show, and I was, really further inspired, to continue walking on the red road. And now this particular book here, his book came from the perspective of quote-unquote Black Indians as being the product of runaway African slaves and the Indians, the quote-unquote Mongoloid Indians. Okay, that was the perspective that he was coming from in his book. Like I said, there were many other books that dealt with that subject matter before his book, but this one here, pretty much popularized it. Okay, and so what's interesting is that so many of the dark-skinned individuals who were claiming Indian descent referred to themselves back in those days as Black Indians. As I said before, descendants of runaway African slaves and Mongoloid Indians, quote-unquote Mongoloid Indians. I say Mongoloid not to be derogatory, but I mean anthropologically speaking. Okay? And see, at this time, you have to remember, see, when you talk about the Aboriginal movement, the dark-skinned individuals who were embracing the quote-unquote Indian heritage, they weren't coming from the perspective of us being aboriginal to the land. Okay? Their concept was that we are a dual heritage people. Okay? Meaning African and Indian. Okay? So that's why I say it's important to get into the details of the lineage. Okay? And put everything in its proper perspective. So what you call the Aboriginal movement today of this color, this pigmentation, this copper color, okay, or red color, which is, this is the real red, okay, because red, when they talk about the red man back in the days, the red was actually brown. Okay, later on, I'm going to show you the documentation to prove that as well. Okay, when you look at that crayon, Indian red, that's another proof too. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to show you the documentation, but I'm also bringing something else to your awareness as far as we talk about the red man. Okay, the red was brown, was this color. This right here was the red. Okay, and Indian red is what is called chestnut today. Okay, those who know me know that I was talking about this way back in the days, you know, about the red being brown, you know. Anyway, let's stay focused, you know, because like I said, I want to stay on the topic. You know, we could get into a whole lot of deep stuff, you know, but I want to stick to the topic of the lineage. Okay, I don't want to go off topic. So the lineage of the Aboriginal movement. So like I said, at this time, those who called themselves Indians, who look like us, the copper-colored races that the Europeans found, okay, these people wearing chokers and regalia like what I have on now, ribbon shirts, this, that, and the other, you know, all of them refer to themselves as dual heritage black Indians, the product of African runaway slaves and Native Americans, quote unquote, okay? And those who look like us, who lived on the reservations as well, refer to themselves for the most part that way as well, okay? And it was, you know, you have a lot of people who were tribally affiliated who fought against the designation of being Negro, black, colored, mulatto, etc. Okay, but this was not because they wanted to reject colorable terms, but it was because they were in denial of a dark-skinned past, okay, of a denial of what they looked like, okay? And there's a lot of brainwashed people. A lot of them were really brainwashed, man. I mean, these people, you know, a lot of them were conking their hair, straightening their hair, you know, a lot of self-denial. Like, give you one example, you know, you go to powwows. Like I remember going to the Queen's Farm powwow back in the days, and there was this one particular individual, self-proclaimed anthropologist, who had an indigenous TV program on public access TV in Queens. And she had a habit of harassing brown-skinned Aborigines when they come to the powwows. Like, she came up to me and said, you know, the powwows are not the same like they used to be. Back in the days, it just used to be Indians. Now you have a lot of blacks that come here, you know, a lot of whites. And now, mind you, this is a black woman, quote unquote, a black woman. I call her black because she is black. In the mind, she is black. Or was black. She's deceased now. But, you know, we got into a dialogue, and I said, well, the original inhabitants of this land were, quote unquote, black. Because that's where her mind was at, you know. So I used the terminology that she's familiar with. So I said, yeah, the indigenous people of this land were black. And we went back and forth. We had a big debate. You know, she said, that's not true. And I said, you know, well, what about the Olmecs? She said, I don't care anything about Olmecs. Now, this is a woman who claims to be and anthropologists say, I don't care nothing about any Olmecs. If there were any black people in ancient America, the Indians would have ate them. Really? And then she says, yeah, you're not Cherokee. Let me show you what some Cherokees look like. And she takes me to these people at the powwow, vendors and stuff like that, high yellow people. You know what I'm saying? High yellow Negroes. Okay? Quote unquote. You know? And mind you, this is a black woman herself. And she takes me to other black people who are like high yellow. Okay, and say, yeah, this is what the Cherokees look like. And she showed me this book she was working on, you know, with people in her family. Say she's working on a book and this, that, and other. I showed her my book that I was working on at the time, you know, which is still a work in progress. It's almost done. It's almost completed, you know. Things in my life, it's very complicated where, you know, I just have not been able to complete the book because I got too much going on. But anyway, you know, that's what sparked the debate when I showed her my book, you know, the rough draft of my book, you know. And I was showing her that the original people of this land were brown-skinned people or copper-colored people, you know. And she takes me to all of these high yellow people. You know, she showed me her relatives, you know, that whose pictures she had in her book. And these are high yellow people, you know. And really, when I came to find out, you know, that, you know, somebody said that she wasn't who she said she was anyway. But, you know, either way, you know, I'm not going to get into all of that. But I'm just trying to get you to understand the mindset of these people who were calling themselves black Indians. And, well, actually, no, some of them didn't even call themselves black Indians. Some of them actually thought, okay, mind you, they're my complexion. Okay, some of them even darker. Some of them lighter. Okay, but these are people who were such wannabes and so disillusioned that they actually thought that they were Mongoloid. Okay, in their minds, they were Mongoloid. You know, they didn't see themselves in the mirror. They didn't look at themselves in the mirror and saw themselves as being copper-colored. But they lied to themselves, and somewhere in their twisted and demented minds, they thinking that they are Mongoloid. Sick people, and this was across the board for the most part. Okay, well, let me say not for the most part, but a whole lot of them. Okay, because some of them, you know, just saw themselves as being dual heritage people. Okay, but that was the mindset. Okay, I'm giving you the mindset at that time. Okay, and just to show you who was real deal back in the days. Okay, it was those of us, you know, even with me, when I was coming from the Afrocentric perspective, I was coming to the perspective of, you know, well, yeah, Africa is the center of creation, so the Indians themselves came from the Africans. You know, that was my perspective. You know, I'm like, you know, well, we all are quote unquote black or whatever. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't any self-denial or brainwashing or, you know, anything like that. You know what I'm saying? But these people, you know, they didn't know no type of consciousness or anything like that. These were just people who, you know, they fit the stereotype of what, you know, people are saying now. You know, a lot of people latch on to the Indian thing because, you know, they don't want to be black, you know, so they just want to be Indian, you know, and stuff like that. That was a, you know, that was a reality, you know. So when you see these, you know, people who the Afrocentrics today, you know, who lump all of us into that bag, you know, it's because of people who think like that. Okay, that what they're talking about. These people, they were that was the mindset. All right. Let me look at the time. Okay. Oh man. Okay. So let me get back focused. My blood just boils because, you know, y'all don't know. Y'all just don't know. I went through hell, man. Partially what inspired me to do this stuff and start working, doing right, you know, writing and, you know, putting out literature and stuff like that was based on all the debates that I had with these idiots, you know, at powwows and stuff like that. And y'all don't know. Y'all looking at somebody who was right there, you know, on the front line. You know what I'm saying? You know, fighting for y'all, fighting for y'all rights. You know what I'm saying? This was not this ideology was not popular back then. You know what I'm saying? You know, had to shut a lot of people down too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, it was real. Y'all have it good now. You know what I'm saying? Get into that too, because well, let me go a little bit forward. Let me see. Let me see what's next. Cause I might have left something even out of the slide. You know. Yeah, this is another book that was written. Well, this actually didn't come out back then. This one came out much later after Black Indians. But yeah, well, let me say something right quick before I forget. I don't want it to leave my mind. Well, let me see something here. I'm going to make a note so that I don't forget to touch on. I want to leave. I know I'm going to leave a couple of stones unturned because this, you know, it goes in depth. You know, we talk about this lineage here. Let me just make a note here so that I come back to it. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Make sure I come back to that point because it's something very important that I want to touch on that I don't want to leave out of this presentation. Okay. So, but yeah, you know, this was, man, y'all have no idea. Anyway, y'all call yourselves Aborigines. Y'all got it easy. Y'all got it real good today. Okay. Yeah, so this book was written by Lonnie Moonfire. You've seen him before. I've had him on the show. Noted historian and author. And his book is called Both Sides of the Water, Essays on African, Native American Interactions. Examines specific events regarding the relationship between groups of indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere and people of African descent. Covering historical and contemporary times, the book covers events in the Americas, Caribbean, and Africa. These relations are placed in context and explored against the backdrop of social political circumstances that have influenced and continue to influence these interactions. Okay, so this is another book dealing with that particular topic as far as African runaways and Native Americans. Okay, but again, this was not written the same time as Cats. This one came out in the mid 2000s. Okay, but however, I know him personally. I know he was working on the book for quite a long time. You know, like myself. I just haven't published the book yet. But yeah, he got his published back in the early 2000s. Okay, so now the Moorish paradigm. Okay, so during this time frame, the only ones who were talking about us being aboriginal to the land were the Moors. Okay, there were nobody wearing chokers and stuff like that who were saying that they were aboriginal to the land. I'm talking about as far as a movement is concerned. You always had some individuals who kept the memory, but I'm talking about, you know, on a whole, it was only the Moors that were talking about this stuff. And I know that there's going to be some idiot who's going to make a comment on my page saying something different. And my thing to you is that if you weren't on the scene, I don't want to hear what you're saying. Can't Google search this stuff. You had to be there. Okay? If you weren't on the scene, then don't comment. Okay? And if you have something to say to the contrary, then prove it. Not with your mouth. Not with some BS that you heard somebody else say on the internet. Okay? Prove it. Show me the proof. Okay? And if you have less than 15 years in this, then you and I can't even talk. Okay? If you have less than 15 years in this, we can't even talk. Okay? You're a baby in this. If you have less than 15 years. Okay? You're in diapers. Okay? Go play with your rattle somewhere. I don't want to hear you. All right? So, as I said, the Moors were the only ones who were talking about this stuff. Okay? And I'm going to prove that. So we had journal. Here's some of the publications during the time. Journal of the Moorish Paradigm. And of course, you know, we come out of the school of thought of the Moors. You know, this is the Holy Quran, Circle 7. Okay? Y'all need to get this book. Don't believe the hype. Okay? Go into the book for yourself. All right? You have a lot of people who are trying to trash the work. And I'm going to, in later presentations, I'm going to explain this to you. Okay? And coming from a perspective that is not so popular, that you are not going to hear, an angle that you're not going to hear coming from too many Moors. All right? But that's another topic for another time. Okay? And this book, Return of the Ancient Ones. Okay? And this was put out by the Empress of the Washita Nation. Okay? And Empress Tiare Golston Ilbay is, well, the late Empress. Okay? The Washita was recognized by the UN as the oldest indigenous nation on the planet. Okay? And they have their NGO number and all of that. Okay? And so the Washita, all right? I'm a Washita. Okay? And I was with the Washita as well back in the days. You know, we'll get into that a little bit later, you know, but I'm a Washita. Okay? And this book, you know, breaks it down lovely. Okay? And the Washita were coming from the perspective that we are mound builders. Okay? Not even coming from the perspective. We are mound builders. Mound builders. Okay? The people who built the mound and pyramid civilization. Okay? Not only from Canada going all the way down to down to the South Americas, but throughout the whole world. Okay? And we're gonna get into that later on too. Man, I mean, God, it's 30 minutes already? Come on, man. But anyway, she did not say she was Indian. Okay, let's just make that clear. The Empress did not say that we are a nation of Indians. Okay, she said we are Moors from Mu of Lemuria. Okay, we are indigenous to this land. Okay, and she always talked about when all of the continents were joined together. Okay, and again, the narrative has changed. Okay, but we are mound builders. Okay, the people who predated what you call Indians today. Okay, and if you look at all the old history books and all the anthropologists who spoke with the quote unquote Indians and stuff, they all said that the mound builders were their ancient people. Okay, and that's us. All right, so you don't hear me talking about Indian. Okay, I'm a mound builder. Okay, the people who predated the Indians. So all of you people, I'm not cursing. Keep it clean. All you people, all y'all mofos who leave comments in my comment section, talking about you're Indian. Well, yeah, you are Indian. Okay, but I'm older than you. I'm more ancient than you. Okay, all you, who call yourselves, Aborigines, talking that trash in my comment section, you want to be Indian. Yeah, you're Indian, but respect your elders. You know what I'm saying? Respect your forefathers. I'm your forefather. Okay, I'm a mound builder. You're an Indian. I'm a mound builder. Okay? Aboriginal to the land, autochthonous to the land. Okay? So, we're past the 30-minute point, but it's still, I'm still just getting started. I have to lay this foundation. All right, so the Moors raised the question of what is your nationality? Okay? And so I remember going to a lecture back in the days. Not a lecture, I'm bugging. I was going to a Kwanzaa event. This is back in the 90s. And every December, they would have different Kwanzaa events throughout the city here in New York. And so out in Boys and Girls High in Bed-Stuy, they would have, an event there. And so I met for the first time Baba Phil Valentine. And wait, where's my... And so it was, at that time when I met him, he was promoting an event that he... Hold on a second. My lips look like it's getting a little ashy there. Get rid of that little ash. All right. My mom's, she always tells me, say, make sure you, when you get on camera, you put your chapstick on. He was looking kind of ashy a couple of times there. All right, so we good now. All right, so he was promoting his events. He used to hold what is called the Gathering of the Metaphysical Masters out at his home in Brooklyn on Carroll Street. Okay, that was his temple. And so he gives me a flyer. And so, he was talking about, having a discussion, about, solutions to our people's plight, this, that, and the other. And, like I said, during that time I had like a Garveyite mindset, and so it was him who I first heard, that was challenging the back to Africa ideology. And he's like, that ain't a solution. He was breaking down, blah, 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 because he was dealing with the Moorish science, Phil Valentine, ill. And, so he gives me this flyer. He really made me think, and, he really got me inspired to, really delve deeper into, metaphysics and stuff like that, because it was coming from, it was like consciousness on a whole different level, that whole consciousness movement, on a different level. And so, I went to the Gathering of the Masters, and there he would have everybody come through there. I mean, everybody. He had brother Hakeem Bey, Bobby Hemmett, just everybody, Curtis Cost, just about everybody that you could think of in the community, was there. And everybody, brother Dawood, and everybody was powerful. They would deal with just every topic. People would be there from the indigenous community, and everybody was coming from a different perspective. It was very enlightening. And so the Moors would come through there, and teaching that, our nationality is not Negro, Black, Colored, Indian, etc. That we did not all come to the Americas via the transatlantic slave trade, and it was very nice, man, and those lectures would start in the afternoon and wouldn't end until the next day, sunrise. Almost sunrise. Okay, you'd be leaving out of there like 3 o'clock in the morning, easy. I remember one time we were there, and the sun was almost coming up. And yeah, man. So that was, I was like, man. So it was a shift in consciousness there. So Jose Pimienta Bay, Doctor. Let me back up. Doctor, give me proper respect. Dr. Jose Pimienta Bay, PhD. Okay, he's the author of the book Othello's Children in the New World. Okay, and he is because he's retired from there, but he was the professor of Moorish history at West Virginia University from 1991 to 2001. Okay, and he's definitely one of the pioneers of the Aboriginal American ideology. You listen to him in his lectures and presentations, and he always presents the idea that a slave trade did happen, but not on the scale that they say. And he always presents the idea that how much easier would it have been to just enslave us right where we stood? Okay, so shout out to Professor Pimienta Bay. You know, I used to buy his tapes, you know, from the lectures and stuff like that back in the days. And here we have Brother Hakeem H.Y. Bay. And Brother Hakeem is the author of the Journal of the Moorish Paradigm. And you people who call yourselves Aborigines today, you owe this brother a huge debt. Okay? A huge debt. Okay? And the reason why I say that, and this, I got nationalized through Brother Hakeem Bay. Okay? And even though, you know, Moorish science was nothing new, okay, much of the history regarding Moorish science was oral history, okay, and outside of oral history, there was not much documentation as far as proving what the oral history was saying. Okay? So the reality is that everything that you call Aboriginal American history today comes from Moorish oral history. Okay, as far as in terms of like the all the information that's coming out about slavery and about us being Aboriginal to the land, and you know that whole history and the research and stuff like that, you know, that's being done, you know, it comes off of the foundation of the oral history coming from the Moors. Okay? And I'm gonna say that, and I'm not gonna name any names, but what I will say is that the moral history, the moral, you can tell it's time to eat now. The oral history of the Moors was plagiarized. I just have to call it what it is. It's plagiarized and repackaged and became known as American Aborigines as you know it today. Okay? It was repackaged. And certain things were taken out and left out. Okay? And certain parts were kept. And then more things were added. Okay? And I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm trying to put anybody down. I'm giving you the timeline. I'm giving you what was before and what is now. Okay? Giving you the timeline. If you want the timeline, I'm giving it to you because I was there. Okay? And only somebody who was there is qualified to bring this information. Okay? And, you know, there's not too many people on the scene, you know, who are out there now, you know, who at least, you know, who is on YouTube and stuff like that, who is telling it to you like this. Okay? And, you know, there's only a few of us, you know. And so Brother Hakeem Bay is to be credited because he did a lot of the legwork, you know, him and others, you know. But I'm pointing out Hakeem because he presented a lot of visuals, you know, a lot of visuals to accompany the research, you know. Not that other people weren't doing it. Other people were, bringing visuals as well, but for someone like me who is, a very visual learner, I found Hakim's work to be very beneficial, because he hits you with many visuals. And, a lot of the stuff, the legwork that he did in terms of, a lot of that stuff was just plagiarized and repackaged today. You got to call it what it is, Again, I'm not naming any names. I'm just calling and bringing the general statement out there and presenting the facts as they are. Okay? And so no one can say to the contrary, because these works were done, and you can check, and I'm going to show you in the later slides, I'm going to show you the dates on the publications, and you'll see these works were done in the 90s going up to the present time. Okay? There's no shade. I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but if what I'm saying isn't true, then show me the evidence to the contrary. Okay? And show me where someone has literature that predates, that was putting out tapes, because at that time, going back in the days, there was no internet at that time. You wanted to see a lecture that you missed, you had to get the VHS. You had to get the tape. So, show someone that has some VHS. A lot of this stuff, I still have on videotape. Unfortunately, I had to throw away. Y'all know whoever, is a subscriber on my channel, y'all saw where I had to throw away big garbage bags of VHS tapes. Unfortunately, due to having to relocate, and he so going back to Hakim took what was Moorish oral history and presented that so that you can access them. And he did copious amounts of research in the library, amounts of hours in the library, and nobody should be trashing this brother, because he did a lot of good work, him and others, during that time, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to look at some literature that was produced back in the days, and it'll all become clear to you, and you're going to see things that look very familiar, and it will be no question about where this Aboriginal information came from. Okay? So I'm going to cut it here. It's time for me to start making my food. The fierce truth seeker is no joke when it comes to food. The fierce truth seeker could throw down. It's one of my favorite hobbies, is food preparation. All right? So I'm going to cut it off here, and I may come back later on and do some more. Okay, I don't know if I'll have time to upload the next part, but I'll at least try to upload this for you. It takes time to do this stuff. It takes time to upload and all that stuff, but we're on slide number 20. We're not even halfway through yet. All right, so all right, let me be out. Until later on, do da da go home eat.